Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so happy you came to watch. I'm doing a video tonight about top 10 reasons to learn French. And so before I start talking about why learn French, I'd like to discuss a little bit about why study modern languages and cultures in the first place. Well, studying modern languages will develop your linguistic skills and prepare you to better understand the culture or cultures associated with them. This will really broaden your horizons, and the greater intellectual curiosity that you will acquire and the ability to express yourself in another language will really help prepare you for the real global community in which we live. And so why French in particular? I've got 10 good reasons to answer that, of course. And so why learn French? First of all, because reason one is French is a world language. It's spoken by well over 300 million speakers on at least 5 continents. And l'Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, the International Organization of French-speaking countries, is comprised of 88 different states and governments. And so these flags don't even represent all of them. And uh, in addition to that, French is the second most studied foreign language in the whole world. And along with English, French is the only language studied in every single country in the world. And all this helps to make French the fifth most widely language spoken of all in this whole world, which is really saying something because there are literally thousands of languages. So top 5, that's pretty impressive. In addition to all this, France operates the largest network of cultural institutions, the largest international network of cultural institutions, which run French courses. And so they offer French to over 750 million people. And so why, other than being a language for the world and exploring culture, what if you're thinking about learning a language for professional benefit? Then French is the perfect language for you because it's indeed a language for the international job market. And so, for instance, an ability to speak both English and French gives you a huge advantage internationally and professionally speaking on the job market because knowing French will open the doors to French companies, well, in France and in other French-speaking parts of the world like Canada, Switzerland, Belgium, North and Sub-Saharan Africa, for instance. So there's a lot of possibilities there for international business, and especially with France, because France is the world's seventh biggest economy of all, and it's the number 3 destination for foreign investments. So it's a key economic partner. So imagine you're not learning a language for professional reasons or business reasons, but just for more personal development, then French is also the perfect language for you, being that it is the language for culture. Um, Now, knowledge of French, this helps since French is the international language of cooking, fashion, theater, the visual arts, dance, architecture, and more. And knowledge of French will also offer you access to a lot of great works of literature, film, and songs in the original French. And of course, I always recommend reading literature in the original language because you're actually getting the words of the author in that way. And I've included on the slide several authors and other kinds of artists who are very influential in their own right, starting with some philosophers like Montesquieu and Voltaire, who influenced politics of the era, and I'll talk little bit about that later. And then, of course, Victor Hugo, love his work. He brought us Les Miserables and Notre Dame de Paris, also known as The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And on the third bullet point, these are two of my favorite existentialist French authors of the 20th century. And interesting tidbit about them, Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, they were actually friends and had a big falling out. And part of this had to do with the Nobel Peace Prize nomination. I won't go into the whole details about it for there, but interesting story, and both very impressive authors in the between war period and mid 20th century. And then you have Leopold Sédar Senghor. He's super interesting. You know, he was a poet who went on to become the president of Senegal, the African nation. So that itself makes me interested in reading his literature and wondering, well, wanting to learn more about exactly how in politics he promoted African culture. And so, very interesting guy to look into. And then right below him, of course, Edith Piaf. If you don't know who she is, La Vie en Rose is one of her big hits. Think of her as France's Judy Garland. Amazing singer, an interesting backstory. You know, she grew up without any education, really. The School of Hard Knocks, pretty much, was her education. And yeah, amazing woman from the day of music halls and concert halls and all that. Impressive artist. Oh, and Alain Delon is very famous actor and singer, also French. And these are just a few examples of the cultural inspirations that you'll be opening yourself up to by learning a little French. Now, if you're not thinking of absorbing culture by sitting at home and absorbing it through media or literature, then French is also a perfect language for you because French is a great language for travel. Uh, did you know that France is the world's uh, #1 tourist destination, getting more than 70 million visitors every year? And knowing a little French makes your visit to Paris so much more enjoyable if you want to come see the Eiffel Tower as shown here, or the Louvre, or anything that Paris has to offer. And it's also good to help you travel in all the other parts of France, including Grenoble, which is the French Alps, pictured in the top right, or even let's say you want to go to the French Riviera or the Mediterranean coastline, or even the coastal shores of Brittany. Lots of good travel opportunities in France. And France also helps you to travel to other places, very interesting French-speaking places outside of France itself, like um, Canada. If you want to come to North America, for instance, Louisiana, it might make your experience there any better. let's say you want to go to Africa or Switzerland or Monaco or even the Seychelles or lots of other gorgeous places like this, such as in the bottom right. There I have a picture from the island of Tahiti in French Polynesia, near Bora Bora, if you've heard of that. Anyway, French is a great language to help you travel and give you access to many parts of the world. And speaking of the image in the top right, that's Grenoble in the Alps. And Grenoble is home to many, many international students every year, study abroad students who come to France to learn in higher education. And on that note, French is a great language for higher education, not just in Grenoble, but also many other places. Speaking French opens up the opportunity for studying at renowned French universities and business schools ranked among the top higher education institutions in the world. And students with a good level of French can often qualify for French government scholarships to help enroll in undergrad or graduate courses in France, where in a number of disciplines you might even get to qualify for an internationally recognized French degree. Now, in addition to um, higher education, we've got France's huge influence in politics. It's the other language of international relations. And for instance, French is a working and official language of the UN, the EU, UNESCO, NATO, the International Olympic Committee, International Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, and many of the world's highest international courts, like in The Hague, for instance. And speaking of the Olympics up there, um, Paris, France is going to be hosting the Summer Olympics of this year, 2024. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And so many of these other organizations, I mean, where would the world be without Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders? And so France has a big influence internationally and as far as diplomacy and international relations go now, but that's not new. Actually, it turns out France has been a major language of diplomacy and international affairs for centuries now in the Western world. Um, for example, like I mentioned Montesquieu earlier, in the 18th century, French philosophers like Montesquieu and Rousseau and Voltaire, they influenced the politics of the era. And little known fact is that some of the founding fathers of the United States of America actually spoke French. And in fact, okay, to give examples, you have Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, both spoke French, both lived in Paris. Well, each lived in Paris for a time where they met the great thinkers of the day. And all this translated into, well, this was part of how French philosophy ended up so influencing the founding fathers in how we defined our own democratic republic of the United States. And so, for example, in the United States Constitution, we've got it spelled out a separation, a division of government into three branches, right? Legislative, executive, and judicial branches, so that not all the power is concentrated in one place. And we also have that checks and balancing system resulting from all that. You know, these ideas, these were all developed by Montesquieu in his work, L'Esprit des Lois, The Spirit of Laws, which was published 1748, I do believe. And so it's not just complete coincidence that French philosophy worked its way into the United States Constitution, because French language was influential even back then. And now, speaking of international influence, French is a language that opens the world right up to you. And it also opens you right up to the world. For instance, did you know that French is the third most widely used language on the internet? Um, which means, well, behind English first and then German, then French is third widely most used, and that's ahead of Spanish. And this means that your ability to understand French offers an alternative view of the world from communications from French speakers on all the continents, and news from leading French language international media like Radio France Internationale, for instance. So this really, French opens the world up to you, even if you don't set foot out of sight. All you need is internet connection, of course. So what's the next reason to learn French? It's a fun language to learn and not so difficult either. And the fact is, there are many methods out there, many services out there that make French language enjoyable for children and adults alike. And it doesn't even take too long to get to a level in French where you can really communicate. And speaking of learning languages, that's another good reason to study French, because French is a great language for learning other languages. For one, it's a perfect base for if you want to learn other Romance languages, for example, such as Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, or Romanian, to just name the ones with the most native speakers of them all. And it will also help with your English. If people are learning English as a foreign language, or if it's your native language, either way. Did you know that around half of the day-to-day vocabulary that we use in English is shared with French, since much of it derives from French? And so, in addition to that, the skills that you're going to develop while you're learning French, while you're learning to control the grammatical structures of French, these you can transfer to learning other languages, or even to a better understanding and control of your own native language. It's going to help not just improving your French, but improving whatever other languages you speak, including maybe your native one. So finally, last reason among the top 10 reasons for learning French in my book is it's the language of love and reason. So first and foremost, learning French is the pleasure of learning a beautiful, rich, melodious language, often called the language of love, in part because it's so beautiful. Hmm. But also, French is an analytic language, an analytical language where learning it, communicating in French helps structure thought and develops your critical thinking skills, which are valuable skills when it comes for discussions, negotiations, even problem solving. So in some ways, learning French might even help you get a little smarter too. So last of all, I wanted to say thank you for everybody for watching my video about reasons to learn French. And thank you especially to everybody who watches until the very end. That's always very much appreciated. So please do feel free to subscribe if you want any more content like this or on other things related to different languages, other cultures. And please hit the like button. I would really appreciate it. Thank you very much and see you next time.